The emergency sirens wailed through the halls of the Zentari medical frigate, slicing through the sterile quiet like a bone saw through cartilage. Containment breach in Hydrotic 3. Unknown biological hazard. The announcement repeated in 3 languages, Doctor. Velk craned his long neck around the corner of the corridor, his 3 fingers tightening around a decontamination sprayer. He had never seen anything like the footage being broadcast on the wall monitor, steam rising off the floor, metal grates corroding, and a human collapsed in the center of the chaos, glistening with liquid that hissed as it dripped from his skin. Is that acid? Velk asked, his voice high with disbelief. No known secretion in human biochemistry should do that, said Lieutenant Senka, tail swishing behind her in agitation, unless he's infected. Velk burst into the hydrotic, air filters on full. The human lay flat on his back, groaning, his shirt soaked through. Pools of sweat sizzled against the floor plating. He looked half-conscious, blinking up at the lights. Do not move, you may be contaminated, Velk shouted. The human coughed. What, I'm just cooling off. That was a tough run, Velk stared. You are melting the flooring beneath you, the man blinked again. Oh that, yeah, sorry, my sweat reacts weird with the alloys in your floors. I told Commander you'll not to let me jog near the fuel lines. You are secreting corrosive liquid and losing electrolytes at a dangerous rate. This is not normal, Velk said, waving over a stretcher team. The man finally sat up with effort, his face pale. Name's Zane, Zane Porter. I'm just dehydrated, nothing serious. You have 3rd-degree chemical burns on your back, Velk said flatly. That is serious, Zane winced. Okay yeah that tracks, hurts like hell now that I'm not moving. They laid him on the stretcher. Velk's assistants wore sealed suits, worried about contamination. Velk didn't argue. The smell alone, sharp like burnt copper, was enough to warrant caution. Inside the medbay, Velk ran scans. Zane's core temperature was nearly 104 degrees Fahrenheit. His blood pressure was low. Muscle fibers were breaking down, likely from overexertion. His sweat, however, was the main concern. This is not acid, Velk finally said after the second scan. But it is extremely high in sodium and ammonia compounds. It's reacting with our floor alloys. That's why it appears corrosive. See, Zane muttered from the bed, lips cracked. I told you it was just a workout. You were running in a sealed environment with no coolant systems, Velk snapped. You are lucky you did not suffer heatstroke. You have mild rhabdomyolysis. Zane blinked slowly. That's bad, right? Yes, muscle tissue is breaking down and releasing into your bloodstream. We must treat this immediately. Velk ordered Roman 4 fluids and monitored kidney function. Zane's creatine kinase levels were dangerously high. He drifted in and out of sleep during the treatment, moaning occasionally as pain flared through his body. Never skip hydration, he muttered once. Why would you continue such exertion in these conditions? Velk asked, genuinely baffled. Zane opened one eye. I was bored. And I have to stay in shape. You guys don't exactly serve cheeseburgers here. Velk turned to his assistant. Begin protein stabilization protocol. We'll need at least 24 hours of monitoring. Hours later, Velk stood by Zane's bed, arms crossed. You will remain here for observation. No physical activity, no sweating. Understood, Zane gave a tired nod. Got it, no workouts, just rest. Velk glanced at the floor near the bed, where a few drops of fresh sweat had eaten small pockmarks into the metallic tiles. You'll also be assigned to a controlled environment until we replace your quarters with non-reactive flooring. Zane groaned. You're redoing my room. We cannot have you dissolving the ship. As Velk turned to leave, Senka approached. Should we alert the Interspecies Environmental Safety Board? No, Velk said. He's not contagious, he's just human. Senka glanced back at Zane, who was now asleep, sweat still trickling down his temple and hissing softly as it hit the bed frame. This species is going to be a problem, she muttered. Velk nodded. One workout at a time, 3 hours after Zane Porter had been stabilized, Doctor. Velk was still in the medbay. recalibrating the nutrient absorption monitors to account for unexpected trace elements now leaching from the human skin. The compound signatures weren't dangerous in isolation, but their interaction with certain ship materials had proven unpredictable. "I'm adding a buffer layer to the cot frame," said Velk, not looking up. He's pitted the lower brace with only 6 exhalations in sleep. Senka adjusted the air filtration unit near the ceiling, her feathers slightly fluffed in frustration. "Why is he expelling so much ammonia through dermal channels? That's not a waste method. It's inefficient." "He claims it's normal," Velk replied, "though I question whether he understands what that word actually means." From the bed, Zane stirred. "I can hear you guys, you know." Velk didn't turn. "I assumed as much. Perhaps you can explain why your body is offloading nitrogen like a stressed Gorlusk beetle during mating season." "I didn't ask to have weird biology," Zane muttered, voice hoarse. "I just wanted to stay ready in case things went sideways. Didn't expect your ship to be allergic to me." "You consider jogging in triple humidified airlocks a reasonable precaution?" Senka asked, stepping closer. "That corridor is now closed for 4 days while we strip the paneling." Zane forced himself to sit up, wincing. "I didn't know I'd turn your floors into soup. I was trying to keep my routine. Helps with stress." "You ever sit around for 6 days with nothing to do but stare at weird fruit and listen to oxygen fans hum?" Velk finally turned. "We have entire cognitive enrichment programs for idle crew. Meditation, virtual immersion novels, acoustic puzzles." "I don't meditate," Zane said. "I punch things. Or run. That's how I keep my brain from eating itself." Senka raised an eye crest. "And you thought sweating to the point of systemic breakdown was beneficial, not beneficial, just familiar," Zane said. "I know how to feel bad in a way that makes me feel better later, if that makes sense." Velk exchanged a glance with Senka. "No," they both said, the silence stretched. "I'm not trying to wreck your ship," Zane added after a moment. "I didn't realize your infrastructure couldn't handle." "Me," Velk exhaled slowly. "We've never had to reinforce bulkheads for internal perspiration. You are the first." Zane gave a dry laugh, then regretted it as his ribs protested. "Glad to be a trailblazer." Senka checked the wall monitor. "Your renal markers are stabilizing. However, you've lost over 3% of your body's water content. You'll remain on fluids for at least another 10 hours. "Great," Zane muttered. "Guess I'll just lie here and not move." Velk stepped forward, folding his arms. "I want to understand something. You chose to exert yourself in an unfamiliar environment, knowing you lacked proper hydration reserves. Why?" Zane stared at the ceiling. "Because I've been in worse places. I've gotten through worse things. When things start to feel too easy, I get twitchy. Like I'm forgetting something important." "Do you experience that often?" Senka asked. "Only when things are quiet," Zane said. Velk looked over the latest scan. "Your thermoregulatory system is aggressively inefficient. You burn calories at an excessive rate and your blood chemistry indicates chronic microdamage in muscle tissue." Zane didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, "That tracks. I've had a lot of jobs where you don't get rest until it's over, and it's never over." Senka tilted her head. "But you are safe here." "Yeah," Zane said. "That's the problem." Velk closed the data pad. "You cannot continue this behavior. If you attempt another exertion event within the next 72 hours, you may suffer permanent neuromuscular injury." "I hear you," Zane said. "I'll stay still. I'm not trying to die." 4 hours later, Velk returned to find Zane attempting to do slow, seated leg raises on the edge of the bed, arms trembling slightly with the effort. "What are you doing?" Velk asked, voice sharp. Zane froze mid-lift. "It's not technically exertion," he said. "I'm just activating muscle groups to prevent atrophy. You are under hydration therapy and muscle repair. Any contraction is counterproductive." "I'm losing tone," Zane argued. "My calves are already soft." "You are healing," Velk snapped. "Not training for combat." Zane dropped his legs and leaned back, breathing heavily. "I get it, Doc, I really do, but I only know how to be one kind of useful. If I'm not that, I don't know what I am." Velk was silent for a moment. Then, "You are a liability to yourself aboard this vessel." Zane looked away. But Velk added, "You are not irredeemable." Senka entered with an insulated container. "Your meal. Pre-chewed nutrient paste, neutral pH, no reactive compounds." Zane took it, eyeing the gray contents. "Looks like someone already ate it." "They did," Senka said, "a synthesizer to be precise." He took a sip and grimaced. Velk turned to him. "From this point forward, you will inform medical before any physical activity. You will remain in controlled environments. And you will not engage in any behavior that risks structural degradation to this ship." Zane gave a tired nod. "Understood." Velk studied him for a moment longer. "We are not accustomed to your kind of resilience. It is not a compliment. It is a variable we have not accounted for." "Fair," Zane said. "I guess I'm still learning how to fit in a world that doesn't need me to bleed for it." Senka blinked, her crest flattening. "That is the most human thing I've ever heard." Velk turned toward the lab exit. "Let us hope it is not also the most dangerous." 7 hours after Zane had been ordered to refrain from all movement beyond blinking and swallowing, he'd figured out exactly how long it took his muscles to twitch from boredom alone. A long, low mechanical hum buzzed overhead as Velk walked in, flanked by a smaller medical assistant carrying a diagnostic wand the width of a twig. The assistant was no shorter than Velk, with translucent skin that faintly pulsed with each breath cycle. Zane didn't recognize the species. "This is Resh," Velk said, not bothering with preamble. "They will be monitoring your metabolic responses. Do not attempt to engage them in banter." "I wasn't planning to," Zane said, eyeing the assistant. They're glowing. Resh's eyes, which were more like dark indentations, blinked vertically. Velk ignored the comment. "We've adjusted your hydration intake to match your renal filtration rate. You'll notice a drop in internal pressure around your joints. Report any dizziness." Zane shifted slightly, felt his knees creak, and immediately regretted it. "Noted." "Also, how many more hours of this do I have?" 16 at minimum, Velk replied. "Possibly longer if your creatinine levels spike again," Zane sighed. "You ever had to sit still for a full galactic cycle with nothing to do but listen to your own heartbeat?" "I once spent 8 days in a containment pod during a fungal outbreak on Drelly's Prime," Velk replied. "I did not enjoy it. But I did not attempt to do squats on the 4th hour." "Touché," Zane muttered. Resh approached and waved the diagnostic wand an inch from Zane's forehead. The device emitted a soft chirp, then a low tone that made Zane's teeth itch. "What's that one mean?" he asked. Resh's voice was high and whispery. "You are attempting to thermoregulate through dermal oscillation." Zane blinked. "Am I sweating again?" Velk stepped forward. "No, but your body is preparing to. You are experiencing anticipatory exertion." "I'm not even moving," Zane said. "You are thinking about moving," Velk said. "Your biology is alarmingly preemptive." Zane rolled his eyes upward. "So now I can't even use my imagination without risking another meltdown." "Correct." Resh adjusted the settings on the wand and stepped back. "He is approaching neurological threshold for passive restlessness. Shall I apply a neural dampener?" "No," Velk said. "He'll resist it." "Damn right I will," Zane muttered. Velk turned to him. "Very well. We will implement a different strategy. We'll introduce structured cognitive tasks. Non-physical, non-emotive. You will solve logic matrices. Puzzles? Yes, but alien ones. You will not enjoy them." Zane gave a dry laugh. "That's the most motivating thing I've heard all day." 20 minutes later, a projection shimmered into the air above his bed. A rotating dodecahedron made of flickering panels, each inscribed with symbols that looked like someone had taught a squid how to write calculus. Zane stared at it. "So what am I supposed to do?" "You must resequence the glyph so that each plane achieves tonal symmetry." "That's not a sentence that means anything in English. You'll learn. The system gives auditory feedback. Incorrect inputs trigger dissonance." Zane touched one of the panels. The entire shape emitted a sound like a violin being stepped on. "Nice," he muttered. "This'll be relaxing." Velk folded his arms. This will prevent you from imagining exercise. You are to complete 10 sequences. 10, Zane asked. There are no time limits. You will not be allowed to sleep until you finish. Zane sighed, reached up, and tapped another panel. A shriek of wrongness echoed through the bay. Okay. This is going to take a while. 4 hours later, Velk returned to find Zane halfway through the 7th sequence, his eyes slightly bloodshot. You are progressing. I'm being punished, Zane said. This is the mental equivalent of running uphill into a headwind made of algebra. You've stopped attempting to flex your calves, Velk observed, because I'm too angry at this shape. I hate this shape. I want to fight the shape. That is acceptable. Hatred is not a kinetic action. Resh floated in behind Velk and scanned the room. His dermal conductivity has stabilized. Neural agitation is within tolerance. Zane pointed at the assistant. See, I'm tolerable now. Velk picked up a nearby chart. Your amino acid uptake is also improving. You may be forming new muscle tissue. I haven't moved in 13 hours. Your body is converting protein into repair substrates. That is preferable to melting our infrastructure. Zane leaned back, exhaling slowly. I'm not trying to be a hazard, Velk. I only feel like myself when I'm pushing limits, even when it's dumb. It is often dumb, Velk agreed. Zane looked up at the projection again. I know, I just haven't figured out who I am when I'm not doing that. Velk did not respond immediately. Then he stepped closer, folding his hands behind his back. You are aboard a vessel where your limits are incompatible with survival. That is not a failure. It is a mismatch of context. Zane glanced over. You think I can learn to exist without pushing? I think you must learn how to choose when to push, Velk said, or you will not last. For a moment, the only sound was the soft, ambient hum of the medbay, then Zane sighed. All right. No more trying to outsweat your floor tiles. I would consider that progress. Zane tapped the next panel on the puzzle. A soft harmonic chime echoed. He blinked. That one was right. Yes, continue. Velk turned to leave with Resh, who stopped briefly before exiting. I have recalibrated your cot's lining to resist further chemical leaching. It will no longer dissolve. Zane gave a tired nod. Appreciate that. After they left, he stared at the projection, then at his hands scarred, calloused, twitching slightly with the instinct to grip, to pull, to strain against something. There was nothing to lift, nothing to fight. Just logic and stillness and shapes that refused to make sense. As the 8th sequence began to unfold, he muttered to himself. I've run ultramarathons on 3 hours of sleep and half a protein bar. I can beat a damn puzzle cube. The puzzle didn't respond, but the room, for the first time in 2 days, didn't smell faintly of scorched metal. 9 hours after Zane completed the final sequence puzzle and was allowed to sleep, the medbay lights dimmed to a deep blue. The temperature dropped by several degrees standard protocol to slow metabolic activity and conserve energy during rest cycles. Doctor. Velk remained at his console, reviewing peripheral sensor logs. He had not expected the human to solve all 10 sequences in a single sitting, especially not after the earlier metabolic event. An alert blinked silently on the screen. Velk tapped it open. The floor panel beneath cot 7, the human's bed, was registering microscopic erosion again. Not enough to trigger alarms, but noticeable. He adjusted the display to show dermal vapor emissions. The heat signature blooming across Zane's body was unmistakable. Velk muttered to himself, he's dreaming. By the time Velk crossed the room, Zane's breaths had shortened. His jaw clenched. Beads of moisture were appearing again along his temples, and the sheet under his shoulder was beginning to discolor. Velk tapped a command into the wall panel. A gentle cooling mist sprayed across Zane's torso, carefully calibrated to avoid abrupt thermal shock. The human twitched, then groaned. Zane, Velk said, not raising his voice, you are experiencing an elevated stress pattern. Zane's eyes cracked open. He looked disoriented. What time is it? 4 hours into your rest cycle. You are overheating again. It was just a dream, Zane said, voice gravelly. Didn't think dreams could make me sweat like that. Apparently they can, Velk said. Your subconscious activities are thermogenically active. That is not normal, Zane sat up slowly, rubbing his chest. It's not always like that, just sometimes. Bad memory loops. Velk narrowed his eyes. Then your body reacts as if under threat, even while unconscious. Zane gave a slow nod. Guess that explains why I used to wake up with my shirt soaked back home. Thought it was just the mattress. Velk made a note on his tablet. We will need to monitor your sleep cycles more directly. You may require buffering protocols to prevent further structural damage. Zane looked around the room. How bad is it? Localized degradation. Contained, but if left unchecked, you will eventually destabilize the support frame. Zane leaned forward, elbows on knees. Didn't think sleep would be the issue. You are an unpredictable organism, Velk said. That is not criticism, it is a logistical fact. Zane rubbed his face. I've been through worse, but I didn't think I'd be dangerous just by existing. Velk studied him. You are not dangerous by intent. But your biology is incompatible with this vessel's systems. That makes you complicated. Zane tilted his head. You ever had to work with a species that didn't fit? Velk hesitated. Yes, once, the Varnic. They metabolized helium, required sealed environments. When exposed to oxygen, they would emit flammable gases. Zane blinked. That sounds worse. It was, Velk said. We lost half a wing, 3 were injured. What happened to them? They were relocated. Their presence was more dangerous than sustainable. Zane sat back. Is that where this is going? That depends on you, Velk said. If you can adapt without overwhelming our medical and environmental systems, your presence can remain justified. Zane tapped his fingers against the bed frame. I'm not trying to be the problem. You are not trying. But you are succeeding, Velk said. Trying not to be is not enough. You must learn to exist without triggering alarms. Zane stood up with effort. His knees cracked faintly. Then I need to know what I'm allowed to do. Velk gestured toward the diagnostics wall. We begin with controlled exertion. Very low threshold, no sweat allowed. Zane raised an eyebrow. You're giving me a workout plan. Not a plan, Velk said. A calibration. 2 hours later, Zane stood inside a sterile chamber barely larger than a closet. The walls shimmered with embedded sensors. A transparent panel displayed Velk's face watching from the monitoring station. You may begin, Velk said. Zane raised his arms. Slowly, he rotated his shoulders. No sweat. He bent forward, stretching his hamstrings, still clear. He did a gentle quad stretch, then a shallow lunge. Thermal levels stable, Velk reported. Proceed. Zane rolled his neck, then lifted his knees in place one at a time. No acceleration. He was surprised. Usually by now, his body would be heating up. 1 minute hold, Velk instructed. Zane froze mid-step, balancing. His thigh trembled. He exhaled through his nose. Maintain composure, Velk added. Trying, Zane muttered. After 60 seconds, Velk gave the release signal. Zane dropped both feet to the floor and leaned against the wall, temperature rising. Moderate, Velk said. Cease movement. Zane wiped his forehead. I'm barely doing anything. And you are already approaching unacceptable thresholds, Velk replied. This confirms our hypothesis. That I'm a walking furnace. That you must remain within a tight window of physical output to avoid damaging the ship. Zane paced slowly in the chamber, arms crossed. That's a hell of a leash. It is a safeguard, Velk said. And it is necessary. Zane looked at the ceiling. Okay, what's next? You return to rest. Then we try again. Same exercises? No, Velk said. Next time we test your response to ambient temperature shifts. We need to know how external conditions affect your emissions. Zane closed his eyes. I'm not made of uranium, I'm just a guy who overdid it. And now you are a guy who sweats through metal, Velk said. Do not downplay the implications. Zane didn't answer. After a moment, he stepped out of the chamber and sat on the bench just outside. Velk emerged from the adjacent room, glancing at the chart. You are not uncooperative, that helps. Not sure how much longer I can go without doing something real, Zane said. Feels like I'm being turned into a plant. You are being reconditioned, Velk replied. Plants don't ruin flooring, Zane gave a dry chuckle. You got any hobbies on this ship that don't involve melting things? Velk glanced up. We have a tactical holochess league. Zane raised an eyebrow. You play? No, I lack the patience for competitive games, but you may find it intellectually demanding. Zane stood slowly. Sounds better than accidentally corroding my own mattress. Velk turned to leave. You begin in 2 hours. Until then, no movement, no stimulation, no stress. Zane nodded. Understood. Velk paused at the door. You are not failing, Zane, you are adjusting. There is a difference. Zane leaned back against the wall, eyes closed. I'm just not used to the kind where standing still is the hard part. Velk didn't answer. The door slid shut behind him. 3 hours after Zane had been cleared from the thermal calibration chamber, he was escorted to a narrow multipurpose room on Deck 6, a space normally used for low-impact mental activities, including holographic tactical simulations. The walls flickered with faint pulses of light as the system loaded the default interface. Zane stepped inside and immediately noticed the lack of airflow. Why does it feel like the room's holding its breath? He asked, flexing his fingers. It is, said a voice from the corner. A Zentari officer stood near the console, pale blue robes folded neatly around his narrow frame. The ventilation has been paused to keep particulate shifts at baseline. Zane rubbed the back of his neck. So I'm supposed to play chess in a vacuum? Not a vacuum, the officer replied. A static medium. Movement of air can alter the projection grid. You'll adapt, Zane nodded slowly. I'm getting real good at adapting. The table in the center of the room shimmered to life, displaying a rotating field of abstract shapes. Some resembled figures, others looked like geometric traps. A line of glyphs hovered over each one. Pick your color, the officer said. Zane squinted at the display. Which one's the underdog? There are no underdogs. Only vectors of probability. I'll take the blue ones then. The game began with a tone that resembled two crystals colliding underwater. Zane moved his first piece, which resembled a floating domino with too many sides. One of the projections blinked and split in half. That's destabilizing your supply node, the officer noted. Zane stared at the board. I thought that was a scout. You thought wrong, right? Learning curve. 40 minutes later, Zane was down to 3 pieces and had launched an unintentional feedback cascade that turned half the board into a pulsating red warning field. You've entered a recursive threat loop, the officer said. You'll need to sacrifice 2 units to reset the board. Can I just flip the table? No, then I guess I'll have to sacrifice something. The officer folded his arms. Your strategic tendencies are erratic. You favor disruption over containment. I used to play poker with convicts, Zane said. Containment wasn't on the menu. The officer tapped the console, saving the session. You'll return tomorrow for a rematch. Try not to destabilize the room next time. Zane stepped back from the table, feeling the ache in his shoulders from holding still for so long. Sure, I'll leave the chaos at the door. Unlikely. An hour later, back in medical, Velk was reviewing Zane's telemetry. He didn't look up when the human entered. Your thermal output remained within limits during the session. Great news, Zane said. My sweat didn't melt your furniture. Velk gestured toward the reclining chair in the corner. Sit. We need to test your dermal reactivity to non-physical stimuli. Zane raised an eyebrow. Is that science talk for I'm going to show you weird stuff and see if you get clammy? Yes. Zane sighed and sat. Bring on the weird. Velk activated a viewing panel. The screen displayed a series of rapidly shifting images. Abstract patterns, unfamiliar landscapes, alien expressions of emotional states. Zane blinked. That one just looked like a bowl of teeth. Correct. It is an empathy symbol from the Karian system. Do you feel anxious, mostly confused? Velk made a note. Good, confusion does not elevate your temperature. The next sequence launched. a rendering of something collapsing in slow motion like a building made of glass and feathers. The soundtrack pulsed with low tones. Zane frowned. "That's oddly sad." Velk checked the readout. "Minimal sweat response, you're within parameters. Glad to know I can feel things without threatening your hull integrity." Velk turned off the display. "We will reintroduce mild stress over the next 2 days. If your body maintains control, we can authorize limited movement outside medical confines." Zane sat forward. "You're telling me I might be able to walk around again, only under supervision. And only if your emissions remain inert. How do you test that without making me run laps?" Velk tapped the side of a sealed case near the wall. "We simulate urgency using environmental cues. For example, we will simulate a decompression alarm and measure your dermal response." Zane raised a hand. "I've been through actual decompressions. That's not a simulation to me. We will use a subthreshold version, just enough to trigger recognition, not panic." Zane leaned back. "You ever consider all this might make me more stressed than just letting me jog in a freezer?" Velk didn't respond. Instead, he opened the case and extracted a thin band, which he placed around Zane's wrist. "This will measure your neurotransmitter ratios in real time. When the simulation begins, do not react, simply observe." Zane nodded, jaw tight. "Let's get it over with." The lights flickered. A low alarm began to pulse, mimicking the sound that in every ship Zane had ever known meant something was about to violently fail. The room's pressure dropped slightly, just enough to trigger instinct. He sat still. His palms itched. His spine locked. Velk watched the monitor. "Your heart rate elevated by 15%, no dermal emissions." Zane's hands curled into fists. "Can we shut it off now?" 3 more seconds. The alarm stopped. The lights stabilized. Zane exhaled hard. "That was unpleasant." "You maintained control," Velk said. "That is promising." Zane stood up slowly, feeling the tightness in his chest begin to ease. "You really think this can work? If we can isolate the conditions that push you beyond safe thresholds, yes. And if you can't, you'll remain under controlled supervision indefinitely." Zane didn't answer. He looked at the floor, then the walls, then the ceiling. "Feels like being kept in a museum exhibit." Velk turned to him. "You are not on display, you are being protected from yourself." "That's the part I don't like," Zane said. "I've always been the guy who protected other people. Now I'm the variable that has to be managed." Velk picked up the data pad. "Adaptation is not weakness. It feels like it," Zane replied. Velk paused, then finally said, "It is not your fault your biology is reactive, but it is your responsibility to manage it." Zane nodded once. "Understood." As Velk left to input the data into the central system, Zane sat back down in the chair and stared at the band on his wrist. It blinked softly, recording every twitch, every shift in tension, every rise in heat. He closed his eyes and whispered to the empty room, "I didn't come here to be a hazard." The band didn't answer, it just kept blinking. Exactly 32 hours after Zane's last containment session, he stood in the central diagnostics bay, a thin polymer tunic clinging to him under the scrutiny of 5 different medical observers. Every inch of the room had been retrofitted with high-resistance materials. Even the floor had been replaced with a composite that could withstand volatile biofluids, just in case. "I'm not leaking anything," Zane said, arms slightly raised. The technician nearest him, a squat being with mottled green skin and no visible mouth, held up a reader that emitted a low humming tone. "Your current dermal state is neutral," the technician said in a strangely melodic voice. "No emissions detected in the last hour." "See," Zane turned toward Velk, who stood behind a transparent barrier. "I've been a model passenger." Velk leaned slightly toward the mic. "You have followed instructions. That is not the same as being a model anything." Zane grinned. "You wound me. You are here to complete your final tolerance assessment. If successful, you will be cleared for unrestricted movement within non-critical areas of the vessel." "Let's get it done then," Zane said, bouncing slightly on his heels. "Do not bounce," Velk replied. The lights dimmed incrementally. A series of concentric circles lit up on the floor, forming a path across the room. You will walk to each circle and hold a meditative stance for 60 seconds. If your body remains within thermal and biochemical thresholds, you've passed. Zane raised his eyebrows. You designed a test that combines yoga and a minefield. It is not a minefield. There's tension in the room, Doc. Feels like something could blow. You, Velk said. You could blow. Zane chuckled and stepped onto the first circle. The panel beneath him pulsed green. One down, he muttered. The next 5 circles passed without issue. By the 6th, small beads of moisture began forming at the base of his neck. Elevated perspiration detected, the technician called out. Barely, Zane said. I'm not even straining. Your skin chemistry is shifting, Velk observed. Hold position. Zane exhaled through his nose and stared at the floor, thinking calm thoughts like hammocks. And iced tea. Do not speak. When the timer chimed, he stepped to the 7th circle. His balance faltered slightly, but he caught himself. Only 3 more, he said under his breath. Do not anticipate the end. Focus on the now, Velk instructed. I'm focusing on not puddling. The 8th circle took longer. Zane's pulse was audibly louder through the monitors. Velk narrowed his eyes. You are entering biochemical drift. Adjust your breathing. I'm doing the best I can without turning into a statue, Zane said. Statues do not secrete ammonia. Zane wiped his brow with the back of his sleeve. You're welcome for the restraint. At the 9th circle, everything went quiet. The technicians stopped muttering. The monitors leveled. Zane stood perfectly still, eyes half closed. When the timer beeped, Velk pressed a button on his panel. You are clear. Zane opened one eye. Wait, that's it, I passed. You did not destabilize the test environment. That qualifies as a pass. Zane stepped off the path, letting out a long breath. I feel like I just held a plank for 12 minutes. You did. The technician approached with a small towel. Zane accepted it gratefully. So now what? He asked, wiping his face. You gonna put a little badge on me that says non-corrosive? No, Velk said. You will be issued a wearable monitor. It will notify you if your body enters a hazardous threshold. Zane raised an eyebrow. Like a bio-alarm, precisely. If it activates, you are to report to medical immediately. Fair, can I eat real food now? Velk made a note on his tablet. You may resume a standard nutritional intake, adjusted for known reactivity exclusions. I'll take it, Zane said, stretching carefully. Feels good to move without setting off sprinklers. You are not yet authorized for high exertion activity. Wasn't planning to sprint down the hall, Zane said, but maybe a walk that doesn't end in a scan, Velk nodded. You may begin with 20-minute intervals. No jogging. Understood, Zane said. I'll be the galaxy's most obedient walker. The technician affixed a small device to Zane's shoulder. It blinked once, then remained dark. You are now on active monitoring, the technician said. Your movements are logged. Zane saluted. Big Brother's watching. Later that cycle, Zane entered the Commons area on Deck 4, a space he hadn't seen in over a week. A few crew members gave him wide berth, though less than before. He nodded politely and took a seat near one of the viewports. Senka approached from the far side of the room, a slim data tablet in one hand. You look intact, she observed. Mostly, Zane said. I passed the obstacle course. I heard. Velk said you didn't even erode anything. I'm healing, Zane said, or at least not leaking. Senka sat beside him. The crew is still nervous. I get it, Zane said. I was a walking caution sign. You still are, Senka said, but now you have a blinking light. Zane tapped the monitor on his shoulder. It's stylish. Senka tilted her head. You're not angry? No, Zane said. I was at first. But Velk was right. I wasn't dangerous on purpose, but that doesn't mean I wasn't dangerous. Most humans in your position would resist constraints, Senka said. I did, Zane said. Then I realized I could either be frustrated or functional. I chose functional. Senka nodded slowly. That's rare. I'm not trying to be rare, Zane said. I'm trying to be useful without breaking anything. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the stars drift by. "I have a question," Senka said. "Shoot. Why didn't you just ask for help earlier?" "Before it got that bad," Zane took a breath. "Because I didn't know how to explain that I didn't feel right unless I was doing something hard, and I didn't think anyone would get it." Senka looked at him. "We still don't, not completely, I know," Zane said, "but you tried." "That counts." Velk entered the commons a few minutes later, paused when he saw them, then approached. "You are due for a check-in in 17 hours, he said. "I'll be there," Zane replied. Velk hesitated. "Your compliance has been noted." "So has your effort." "Thanks," Zane said, unsure if that was praise. "If you maintain current levels of stability for one cycle, you'll be authorized for independent activity." Zane grinned. "You're really warming up to me." "No. But the ship is no longer afraid of you." "I'll take it." Velk turned to leave, then stopped. "Your tolerance for discomfort is unusually high." "Some of us learned that early," Zane said. "It was either adapt or fall apart." "I see," Velk said. "Then let us agree to keep you from falling apart." Zane nodded. "Deal." That evening, Zane walked the perimeter of Deck 4, his stride relaxed. The monitor stayed dark. No alarms, no corrosion, just a quiet hall smooth underfoot and untroubled by his presence. He didn't need to push. Not today. He had nothing to prove. And for the first time since boarding the ship, he didn't feel like a threat. He just felt like crew.